Okay, we are live with Jantzen Cole. Jantzen and I go way back at Wright Medical. He was an engineer who moved into sales and then marketing, and I believe Jantzen understands messaging and branding better than most people in our industry, especially in startups with limited resources. Today, he's the VP of marketing at Artelon, and if you don't know, Artelon's growing sales at about 50% year over year, which is really impressive. But his company's also killing it with branding and marketing messaging. So anyway, I asked Jantzen to come on and share his thoughts. Handing the mic over to Jantzen. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. I hope you guys are ready to tolerate a pretty rough Southern accent and maybe some philosophical waxing that you may or may not agree with. I'm Jantzen. Tiger and I worked together a long time ago, and we've kept in contact on nearly a couple decades now. So these are really not so much things that I thought up and like, this is a theory I want to go. This is more about just what I've learned through trial and error, like screwing a lot of things up and then going, okay, that thing worked. Let's do that again. And what you're going to, even the title, Ortho Startup, not marketing, brand management, is really ties into part of the, really a journey I've been on. Because 5-6 years ago, I would have not exchanged those words. I would use the word marketing, but 6 years in Artelon, I would tell you that I think focusing on brand first has been a big factor for us, and that may or may not be useful to you. So I'm used to getting disclosures at these talks. So 2 disclosures I had for the day. I have 0 academic marketing training. I've arrived at this position via engineering and about a decade in sales. And disclosure 2 is this beard is by Just for Men. So I'm big on authenticity. So do the touch of gray so it looks a little more authentic, but this is me. So now you know what you're dealing with. I can kind of get on with the messaging. So my premise is this: in early stage med device companies, brand is more important than your marketing. And to kind of give some background to that, maybe hit a little bit of the definitions. Brand is your foundation, and this is where those that interact with your company are going to find really 2 critical things: authenticity and consistency. So that is housed by your brand. Marketing, which is kind of the output of that, is simply the tactics that promote and create engagement in alignment with your brand, or should be in alignment with your brand. I think one of the things that we see in our industry is that's not always the case. There's a lot of times where the brand and the marketing are really not on the same page, and that creates a lot of challenges for everybody. So if brand is the most important thing, then in the early years, I would suggest that the 2 most important things that you are chasing are curiosity and trust. So trust is going to be a direct result of that authenticity and consistency of your brand. And then customer curiosity, in my opinion, typically starts with curiosity around your team, their personalities, their experiences. Curiosity with your product is in the mix, but certainly early on, I think your products are not going to be as interesting as your people. A lot of it's going to be early on, you going to people that already trust you, believe what you're saying. So I'm heavy on the people, the stories of the personalities and things that actually guide your products. I think early on are really, really important. And recognizing, if you're new coming into certain things, maybe retelling that story or starting a new story. My start at Artelon 6 years ago, when I arrived, we had a company that had been around for a while, but nobody really knew exactly what Artelon's mission was. It had really kind of been sold as a duct tape for orthopedics. So it works everywhere, right? which told people that it's kind of good everywhere, not great anywhere. And then behind that, from a logistics standpoint, company been running out of product. They, really over promised, under delivered, a lot of different places. So my first year, frankly, was flying around, sitting in front of people, and just simply saying, "I'm sorry. We screwed that up. We shouldn't have said that. We don't have that yet." And it was not a fun year. Um, but if we had not, Aaron and I had not committed to just going and taking, people needed a pound of flesh. They were frustrated. They felt, left on an island. And for us to kind of go, hey, we're going to be different, but we're going to sit here. We're going to take your shots. We're going to listen to what you have to say. We're going to tell you that we can't fix this overnight. It's going to be a bit of a journey, but we are going to try and get 1% better every day. That process, frankly, was way more important than me putting together surgical techniques and creating a new logo at that point. Because without that trust that we gained by being vulnerable, by kind of owning the fact that we had the brand Artelon had failed our customers in a lot of ways, we would have never even got to the next step of, let me show you the new things we're doing. So that's the part where trying to get that trust on the front side, that to me, that meant everything in Artelon. So I'm going to shift now, from kind of establishing why brand is important to some critical things. Like if you are establishing your brand, if you just want to recheck your brand, I think this exercise, these next kind of 3 slides, we try to do this every 6 to 12 months, and update, tweak, give ourselves flexibility to, kind of upgrade our brand. We expect to be dynamic. So these are the things we look at on a consistent basis. We want to define who we are as a company, but the company is people, right? So that's a very, personnel driven answer. And then how do we make who we are as humans that run Artelon, how do we make that compelling? What's our CEO like? Are we funny? Are we nerdy? Are we really buttoned up? Are we laid back? It's been important to us to really define who we are, because what I'd like is that if you read our marketing and then you meet me for a cup of coffee, like those feel the same way. I didn't, it was kind of something Aaron and I talked about often, was like, how do we make every interaction feel like you're generally interacting with Aaron or myself or, Mark or that sort of thing. So it's not always obvious, but these are great things to wrestle with. So I just encourage everybody, spend time like looking at your customer facing people and, kind of come up with an identity, commit to that, define it, and really exploit it. And none of those are bad. Like you can be nerdy, and nerdy can be awesome if you're good at being nerdy. But understanding what you are, not trying to kind of communicate something other than you are, is one, it's the easiest thing to be. You don't have to make up anything. But 2, I think it resonates with people.
So Jantzen, how do you figure out what your brand is in your customer's mind?
Uh, that's I think on the front side, I think you have to ask a lot of questions. If you're brand new and you're getting started, I think that's something you ask questions of to see where you're starting from. I think you have the opportunity to craft that message moving forward if everybody's on board. So surveys or dinners with kind of thought leaders and that sort of stuff, if if you give them the full boat and say, hey, give it to me straight, like, where are we? Who are we to you? And you're not going to hurt my feelings and that sort of stuff, that, those can feel unsafe, but they are really, really nutritious conversations to have. And I think you ask the good and the bad there. So what are the good things you think of? And maybe if you're struggling with that, step back a minute and just kind of go, hey, what do you like about me? Like, you took a meeting with me. Why? Because I'm nice, because we went to the same college, because, my LinkedIn post was funny, whatever it is. Start with, what are people connecting with? And you can start with that very personally and start to expand that, see if those traits align with other people in your organization. It's usually not uncommon at smallish companies that, your 4 or 5 core people are pretty similar. That's kind of how we all coagulate. So it's not often, at least on the early stage, that you're trying to go, but this guy's this way and this guy, like, a lot of times that group, hangs out socially as well as professionally. So that, in my experience, it's not been super diverse, for better or for worse. Is that helpful, Tiger?
Yeah, it helps. Friends hire people like themselves. So that's it. And that dictates the culture early on. Makes a lot of sense.
And if you're confused, you can always ask your wife. She'll tell you what's likable and what isn't. Um, I think the second part of this, though, is in my own experience, has been a very underutilized question, and I find it to be very, very powerful question to wrestle with. Who aren't you? And I'm going to go two places with this. One, from a pure marketing standpoint, knowing what you're going to say no to, what isn't going to be your focus, on any given day, is extremely important, and that was really driven home at Artelon. As I mentioned when we started here, we were, our pitch was we were good at everything, right? That's a terrible message, and we ran with it for probably a year, because we were trying to figure out what was sticking, what isn't. And about 9 months in, we were like, okay, we got to get this thing tighter. And then we really shifted and said, we are going to be a foot and ankle focused company, regardless if we're, philosophically and scientifically, we're just as good in the rotator cuff or the ACL as we are the foot and ankle. But we wanted to identify an area that people would recognize us as, hey, they're the people that do this in that area, and they do it well. But to do that, we had to start saying no. Like, we're not really, if you want to do some sports medicine cases, we'll ship you the stuff, but we're not going to do a lot of brand promotion around that indication. We're not going to do education around that indication. It's important to us that we are known for this. So knowing exactly what you're not going to do is really, really important, both for resources, for focus, and for your customers to know who you are. What are they looking for you? What situations are they going to be looking for you in? And then secondly, in more kind of a broad brand perspective, you have the opportunity to, I like to use this, I call it kind of the anti brand, right? You have the opportunity to look at your biggest competition and be the exact opposite. When we started here, we used to say, if all we do is work with people who don't want to work with company X, then we have a tremendous business ahead. And knowing that, we said, well, if company X is, wears suits to everything, we're not going to wear suits. If they keep a brand and a color scheme that is consistent forever, we're going to be playful with colors. We're going to maybe spell some things wrong. We looked at our competition as a template to go, let's just be as different as possible. We want everybody who doesn't want to do business with them to want to do business with us, and we don't want there to be any confusion that we are not them. Primarily, you'll never be a better Smith and Nephew than Smith and Nephew already is, and you'll never be a better Arthrex than Arthrex already is, and you'll never be a better Zimmer or Stryker or than they already are. They have way more horsepower. They have so many more years of being that brand. So you're already going to lose that battle. Don't take that fight up. Like, differentiate, go to the left, even if it looks crazy, if it feels different, do it. It's so much more defendable when you are being authentic and unique. So, going through that question with us, We wrestled with who are we? I think Aaron and I looked across the room and said, well, I think generally we're laid back. We have a great deal of experience in the foot and ankle. Uh, some days we're funny. Sometimes we even mean to be. Um, and I think the other part that was important for us was we were aspiring. We were able to kind of look at where we are and then kind of see, but this is where we want to be, and we wanted to communicate that to people. We wanted people to know, hey, we're here and this is where we're at. And sometimes where we're at, it's a little messy. It's not clean. We're going to have some bad days. And by default, that means you're going to have some bad days. We're going to go ahead and apologize for that. But we want you to know that we're going to get better, and we're going to get a little bit better this year and then this year. But this is where we're headed. We'd love to have you a part of this ride. And it's going to be bumpy, but it's going to be a lot of fun too. We're going to have a lot of victories. So, I think that aspiring part was, you get trust and then you start to cast a vision. Then all of a sudden you have some grace while you're still messy, because people are buying into where you're going, not where you are today. And they see today as part of the process. So those were important things for us to communicate early. Overselling ourselves early as we have solved all these problems wasn't true. And two, I also recognized to most people it was unbelievable that we could be that good already. How could we? We haven't been around long enough. So that was important for us to be that honest and that vulnerable with those things. So the second key to brand, I think that we've experienced here was having great clarity on where are we going to guarantee excellence today. Um, I'm not saying anything you guys on here don't know, but you have to deliver an excellent experience somewhere in the customer journey. Doesn't have to be the entire customer journey, but you have to have an inflection point somewhere where you go, we are really good at that. And your customer knows you're really good at that. So is it medical education? I mean, think Synthes back in the day, like whether you like Synthes, bought their plates, they were where you learned to do trauma. Um, Is it OR efficiency? Is it unrivaled innovation? Is it, I'll give Teresa a shout out. Is it their direct to consumer capabilities? Own some piece of the journey, commit to it, tell people you're good at it, and then be good at it. And it doesn't have to be the whole thing. But you got to give people a place to look where they go, damn, they're really good at that. That's really important. For us, I'm going to take all these and I'm going to go back to kind of where we are. So at Ardalon, I'll tell you, present day, we think we can deliver on a very efficient and uniquely kinematic lateral ankle OR experience every single day. So you see how detailed I got that? Lateral ankle in the OR experience, kinematic. But we know we can do that really, really well every single day. Now, our medical education is good. The intelligence the foot and ankle sports intellect of our sales team is rapidly improving, but the OR experience is where we are committed. We believe that we can get in an OR and allow a surgeon to have a really, really pleasant, if not, kind of novel and exciting experience every single day. And that's where we're doubling down. But that's just where we chose. We could have delivered on any of these other kind of subsets. You guys know your own markets, but look at places where you have an opportunity to just really crush something. And maybe it's got to do with the talent you have on your team. Maybe it's got to do with your technology. Or maybe there's just a nuanced opportunity that is sitting in your lap that others have not exploited. But own that one place of excellence, communicate it, deliver on it. And then kind of the final thing, and I alluded to this earlier, this aspirational aspect. So be aware and allow this to be dynamic, but be aware of where today's excellence is taking you and be quick to share that. That aspirational thing of like, this is where we are. We're doing this really well. We're struggling here, but we're getting better. But these things are going to start coalescing. And when those things coalesce, we're going to be here. And then we're going to be here. I think as a human trait, people like the idea of being a part of something that's kind of feeling like an underdog, and they're going to be a part of the victories along the way. We have bought into that wholesale. So for us, we had to win the lateral ankle. I mean, it's the biggest soft tissue operation in all of medicine. It's bigger than the ACL. So we had to establish ourselves there. Having established us there, we believe, and at one point that was the horizon. We have got to be excellent and compel and deliver on being excellent in the lateral ankle. I think we've delivered on that. So having delivered excellence there gives the opportunity to look forward and go, we believe kind of the place we are headed is to be excellent in all foot and ankle sports medicine. Like that's our new horizon. And that's important. That has been dynamic. We probably redefined that or opened up that barrier. Every 12 months ago, we think we can be good at lateral and maybe Achilles, and then lateral and Achilles and medial ankle. But having those discussions and letting that be a dynamic conversation, one, it communicates that you are progressing to your customers. Two, it lets them know they're a part of something that's just got a lot of upside. People get excited about that. And now back to the marketing part. So tactics are important. They're actually critical, but run every tactic through your brand filter to check for authenticity and consistency. These, when you have interactions with customers and your salespeople, which I would also brand as, your customers, every interaction is either growing or weakening your brand trust. There's no such thing as an indifferent interaction. So you got to look at every single one of these as, you're either moving forward or backward. You're never staying similar. So work really hard, define your brand, and then as you come up with the tactics, make sure the tactics are in alignment with kind of who you are, what you're excellent at, and where you're going. For us, tactically, how we've defined this is we only do foot and ankle events. We ask a lot of questions about, the things we're doing. We're always seeking to get a little bit better. We iterate and iterate and iterate. I mean, I think we have, I don't know, 12 products per se right now. Behind the scenes, we've iterated each one of those products 28 times. We are constantly getting feedback, going back and tweaking just a little bit, change this, move that, put a new mark there. So we are moving in that, and that's part of our engagement. We're on this journey. So for us to be on this journey and commit to being dynamic, that means we're going to take feedback and we're going to do things about it. So that's things that we live. And then in our communication, we communicate in smart but casual tones. We are often we can be educated and intellectual, but we can also be we can make fun of ourselves. We can just be silly, and we really want to just be comfortable. And we also try to get face to face as often as possible. We just think we're better at talking to other humans than we are sending emails and making phone calls.
Yeah, so how do you do that, Jantzen? You only have 25, 30 employees, and the big guys have hundreds of people all over the country.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. I think you have to take advantage of target rich environments, places. Tiger and I were talking about this before we started. I'm not at AAOS right now, and we were kind of talking about the rise of the subspecialty meeting. Those are so rich. And so we will go full in at an AOFAS or an ACFAS and just send a pop-up tent to AAOS, because you got just enough people. You got to take full advantage of the times where you have a lot of people in one place. So we work really hard at those subspecialty meetings. Is another reason to be very laser focused on what indication and what part of the world you're really going to be focused on getting good at. The other part is we use data. we use data a lot on who is doing the real work out there, who are the most influential people, both from where they trained and how they publish and that sort of stuff. So when you are having to make choices of who to see and who not to see, we want to make sure that our impact from a marketing perspective is built around influence. I, I spent a lot of my career being focused on how much volume people do. My question in 2024 is, who do they influence? Because if I can get to somebody who influences a lot of people, then that magnifies my work. And so you can't shortcut that. You have to you got to get the data. You got to have you just got to do the research. Every salesperson out there will tell you their guy is super busy and well connected. Um, that's not usually the case. Um, I shouldn't say it's not usually the case. It's always the case. So you got to figure out which ones it's really, really the case. And so yeah, I know that's a broad answer, but there is data out there that can help you figure out where time is best spent. But I would challenge, everybody that is tapped on resources, be really, really in tune with people who are influencers. Not, I mean, not completely disregard who has high volume. Volume matters. That's how you pay the bills when you're growing. But don't just chase volume, because there's a lot of high volume people out there who in their own communities, nobody likes them, or they're working so much that they don't have influence. They're not out there. So you really got to walk that fine line of making sure you're growing and getting the revenue, but being very efficient with your time and your conversations. And if you can
So,
get to somebody and and leave an impression on them, and then their impression hits 20 other people, like that's magnificent. That really gets efficient if you're able to kind of really focus that way.
so what are the attributes of a influencer? And do you give once you target an influencer, do you give them materials to reach out to other surgeons?
I think we're in the midst of redefining that right now. In the past, you went to, you went through a certain fellowship program, and this person at the program is really influential. So we really need to get to them, because then every fellow or every resident who comes through thinks about things. And that's not dead. The second place you went was journals. Who's publishing a lot? And make sure that they buy into what you're doing, because they're likely to be on a podium sometime, and that will help you as well. And that's also good. I would say 10 years ago, those two things, that was it. Like, you want influence, you find those two things and that's where you go. We are now in an age where social media is allowing people who don't publish and aren't in a fellowship program to influence vast numbers of people. And I have doctors who have great anxiety about this, and they shouldn't be this, and they didn't fellowship train here, and I'm like, maybe, but this is the world we live in, and you can't stop them. Like, to the average person, like, the biggest megaphone matters. And so these people are influencers because they're making themselves influencers, and they're not having to go through, all the hierarchy of societies, and they're not having to go through publishing. They're just good at social media. So for us, it's really, we have to chase more things now. Like, there's the traditional routes you pay attention to, but this third group that is social media savvy, and they're charming, and they are compelling in what they're doing. Like, you can't ignore those people either. That is free advertising. If those people are willing to get on your train, and you're able to even link your posts, your advertising to these people who have, these tens of thousands of followers and that sort of stuff, like, you can't deny that. That is the world we live in. And I think, as I'm 47, so I feel like I'm on the back end of, like, trying to keep up with how all these things are moving. The generation of marketers behind us, they're probably going to be all in on that. I don't know how relevant journal articles and things will remain in 10 years, because they're so slow. Like, if you do a real study, it doesn't get published for 5, 6 years after the start of the study. And by then it's irrelevant. I mean, this world's moving so fast. So um, we're learning right now. For me, I'm trying all of it, and it's a very inexact science. But I'll tell you, 5 years ago, I didn't look at anybody's social media content or what their followers were whenever I was engaging someone. I'll tell you now, when I'm looking for consultants, I check the credentials and I check the academic side. I also go through all of their social media, and it can be very, like really get me excited about somebody, or it can sometimes be like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how many years this guy's got left of being an influencer. I don't know if I want to, put my eggs in this basket or not. So um, I suspect everybody on this calls had that same kind of tension of like, how do I weigh these things? I think it's a little messy right now, but you have to pay attention to it. It's happening.
So what platforms, Jansen? LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok are probably maybe YouTube.
Yeah, there are people who are really, really smart in this conversation, so I'm likely to be
Don't don't sell yourself short.
I think so. If I'm coming from the position of a startup that has any goals of being acquired or going public, um, I would tell you that the richest environment is LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is the mix of, you're going to have your surgeons and you're going to have kind of some of your decision makers along the way. You can develop brand awareness on LinkedIn, but kind of behind that, I think you have a much greater visibility to the strategics, the bankers, the VC guys. They live much more aggressively on LinkedIn than they would say a TikTok or an Instagram or that sort of thing. If your model is direct to consumer, and this is real time for me, this is oversimplified, but this is how I look at things. If I want to go direct to consumer and my product is Medicare based, I need to spend a lot of time on Facebook. If I'm private insurance focused, I'm probably less Facebook, much more Instagram, maybe TikTok. That's kind of how I break things down. Our world is generally private, and we're kind of trying to brand ourselves into that sporty world. So we really committed ourselves to LinkedIn early on. That's our most mature kind of platform for us. But we are spending a lot of time now trying to develop into Instagram, because that sports crowd, yeah, that direct consumer there. Now for us, I think some of the things that we've had to be honest with ourselves, different than say a bunion, or some of these other indications. A bunion is trees. One of the things I give them such credit for was they were able to look at the direct to consumer market from a perspective. They are treating an indication that most human beings can self-diagnose in the living room, can look down and be like, dang, that's called a bunion. I need to get that fixed. So they were poised to go straight to and know that their intervention was going to need this product 97% of the time. And so John, I've known John for 20 years. John's a very, very smart guy. They nailed the opportunity there with direct to consumer because the indication was so visible. We're not quite that, right? Like, so you sprain your ankle, you kind of have to, most people are going to get better. And then 30% are going to not get that much better. And then of that 30%, some of them are going to decide I'm just fine not being mobile. And the other 25% are going to be like, nah, I don't like not doing CrossFit anymore. I don't like I'm going to go get something done about it. So we can induce like, hey, would I be a candidate for Artelon? But we're not one-to-one in the direct to consumer market like a bunion type B. So in that, we haven't committed as much of a focus. For us, let's just kind of take some practice runs. Let's work on having some brand awareness out there so that people might think of us and mention it to the doctor, or maybe even support driving people to a physician's office. But for us, that's how we've broken it down. I think things like TikTok, and Twitter, those are very specific types of content. I would just be honest with you, my team's talent is not really in those in that world right now. So we just kind of want to be like, man, we're not going to be good at TikTok or Twitter. There are people much better at it than we are. Let's just leave that alone. I think those are very powerful. I think people would tell you TikTok is rapidly growing. The fastest growing platform out there is YouTube. And I haven't seen an orthopedic company really figure out how to get good at that yet. Somebody's going to, and it's probably going to pay off for them. But that's a platform that everything I'm reading is exploding. I think it's exploding at kind of the the 15 to 25 age group right now, but those people will be 25 and 35 here in not too long. So
Yeah, I think, well, YouTube is a monster. It's the second biggest search engine in the world. And it's tied into Google, obviously. But you go to YouTube when you want to know how to do something. And so there's a lot of surgeons that are posting how-to surgery videos.
Right.
Yeah. I think if you have a procedure or a new way of doing something in medical treatment, I think that YouTube's great. I think Stu had a comment. Are you there, Stu?
Yeah,
Yes.
yes, I'm here. Sorry about that. My comment went back to Janssen's point on influencers. Kind of reminded me of Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point. I seems like that might be interchangeable. The connectors piece of his theory on how products and technology spread and awareness gets raised. I guess my question on the back of that comment is, how do you identify the individuals who would be potential connectors for that specific industry? My wife is in PR. She does. They have a whole department at the agency that focuses just on connecting with influencers on these social media applications. But it's a different product, right? It's direct to consumer. I feel like B2B, it's more challenging to identify.
Yeah. So I'll share with you our experience. We've done it two ways. I've engaged with a couple surgeons, and frankly I let them do the work. I did the lazy man's. I just looked for people that had the most followers. And my assumption is if you have a lot of followers, you're doing something consistently that people engage with, and let me take advantage of the access that you've already got. And I would say that has been pretty successful, but I've learned things along the way. The deeper than that, you have to figure out kind of what is their content. I want to say the most followed foot and ankle person right now is Dr. Dana. She's a podiatrist out in California. She's got millions of followers. But and I was like, oh, interesting. But her content's not always foot and ankle relevant. Sometimes she's talking about makeup. Sometimes she's talking about vacation spots and that sort of stuff. So she, I think, would probably be more of an influencer in general. She just happens to be a surgeon. And so I think for me, you set goals, right? So what do you want this influencer to get you to? More doctors, more patients. And so for someone like Dr. Dana, I'm not sure I'm getting either one with that. I just may get a bunch of eyeballs. So I probably wouldn't look at that. But I think in my world, there's probably, I think to be fair, there's call it 5,000 human beings, 5,000 surgeons in the entire United States that would really have any use for me. So I don't have to have 300,000 followers. I just need the right 5,000. So trying to kind of figure out who is connected to those 5,000 people, or who can get me to 300 of those people, and that sort of stuff. That becomes a little more nuanced than just kind of a pure, beautiful metric of like, this person's got 8,000 followers. On the patient side, the other thing that we have done, I don't know if this is absolutely true, but I'm going to say it because I'm kind of proud of it. I think we're the first company to ever get an NIL deal, orthopedic company to have an NIL deal with a patient. We did a patient almost 3 years ago, like literally 2 months into NIL being launched. And I've learned a vast amount about that. Like that can really not go well, and that can be pretty cool. Same thing there, though. I think what we identified there was we wanted to associate ourselves with one. These are typically, if you're doing NIL stuff, these are kids, and they're likely to do kid things. So you really do need to vet their social media, because on any given day, they may do the things that you and I did when we were 18 and 20 and 22 that we didn't, fortunately there weren't cameras on us. There are cameras on them. So you have to do some character vetting. But assuming you get through that, what you have access there to is you have access to these pockets of athletes, these club athletes that play these sports year round, and every single one of them gets injured. So when they get injured, they're trying to go back and they're trying to resource their most common source of information with social media. Who else has had this? Who else can I relate to? And they will actually work those channels and go, hey, this happened to me. What'd you do? Who'd you go see? What product did they use? And so when properly placed, we've actually seen that be pretty effective. So Stu, I don't know if that was, I know it's kind of broad. I will tell you, I don't have it. There's likely some people on here that are even better than me at that influencer thing. I'm in a place of I'm just trying to learn, and I'm open to what anyone else has learned, because I think whatever I learned yesterday is 2 weeks from being out of date. So yeah, it's like always trying to stay on top of it.
Thanks for answering the question. Yeah, generally I feel like orthopedics and med device has been slow to adapt to social media, but it seems like we're at a turning point with that in the last year or two.
Yeah, at least we're paying attention to it now. I don't know. There are some out there that are doing it very well. So one last slide. I was just going to kind of
Oh,
throw
go ahead,
out.
Jance. Go ahead.
And this is just kind of an encouragement to everybody that works in marketing. I just want to encourage and challenge everybody to like your invitation and walking into the marketing branding side of these companies is be the rebel. Like if you're not creating somebody have a little more hypertension in their life, then I think you're missing an opportunity. Things in our space, I think if we were all honest with ourselves, like those of us that have been tasked with these jobs, we are so less creative, so less progressive than our counterparts in fashion or cars or, pick your other industry. We're just really, really boring, really predictable. And I understand a lot of that is driven out of the compliance parameters around us and that sort of stuff. So I'm not being flippant about, what our responsibilities are. But I think we also can get ourselves in places where we just kind of, our bosses, frankly, don't ask much of us, to be fair. Just make another surgical technique and make sure the website reads okay and have 2 posts a week, and you're doing a great job. Like, yes, but I think over time, we can absolutely lose our souls by just being boring and rubber stamping everything. So I feel like we're kind of coming into a place where med device marketing is starting to be willing to take some chances and be more fun and be more interesting and be a little less, here's my product, and be a little bit more like, and this is who we are. And so just as like a final statement, like allow yourself to be a little bit off the beaten path. Challenge, what's always been done, not to be a pain in the ass, but because it's worth challenging. The standard rules of branding, like your logo should never change or except for every 10 years. And like, no, change your logo every 6 months if you feel like it. Make 5 logos, change your, don't, especially when you're small, don't just fit to the rules because they're the rules. Breaking the rules is going to make people notice you for better or for worse. And that's usually not a bad thing on the front side. I mean, just have fun, like do some things that maybe even make you a little nervous, but
Yeah.
you're going to learn stuff. You'll pick up new skills. You'll, and truth is you'll actually be effective just trying things. So
Hey, go
that's
ahead,
it.
John.
Hey, Jantzen, great to see you. Awesome presentation today. It's been a year since I've seen you, and you touched on NIL, and we talked about that last year, and I love it. I love that unique take. I love the direction. I think it's fantastic. So, what have you learned in the last year since our last conversation about NIL? Because we talked about some of the challenges then, and you were like, "Hey, we'll see. Maybe hopefully she stays on the court."
Yeah.
So,
So here's gonna be my quick list of NIL. And I'm shortcutting like probably 2 years of anxiety for you guys. One, when you have an athlete and you shoot your video of your athlete, don't premiere that video in season because you will not sleep until the season's over. We did a basketball player. She's 6'8". She looks like a walking sprained ankle. And we did both of her ankles. And then I decided I was going to launch her whole campaign right at the beginning of basketball season. And I didn't sleep the whole basketball season because I was like, man, we're running these deals and she's going to sprain her ankle on any given night. And then we're going to look ridiculous. So my advice is shoot it, get the film, and then run it in the off season where you don't have any risk of like while you're running your campaign that she's actively injured. So seems obvious. The marketer in me was wanting to align all this with season, but there's real risk in running it in season. 2, I was not necessarily prepared for how unwilling, or I guess I'd forgotten what it was like to communicate with me when I was 18 or 20 in college. Uh, these are not professional job employees. So when you need a post to go out at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, like it often doesn't go out at 2 p.m. on Tuesday. So I completely underestimated the management effort that it takes to get the content made, approved, get it posted on time. Do you post it from their account? Do you post it from your account? Those were, I in my mind, I thought we'll get these kids. They're posting things all the time. It'll be super easy. Hey, Kennedy, hey, how about shooting a video from the Oregon locker room today and talk about how your ankles are doing? Oh my gosh, like in 6 months, we still never got that accomplished. Like it was just so hard to chase that down. I think the third thing is there are likes. And so most of the people we have good followers. I think as I've gotten into this, I start to pay attention to other things. Are they good speaker? Are they, is their content, are they getting followed because they're just pretty or handsome? Because if that's the case, like you're going to have a hard time getting them to actually string together features and benefits or kind of the things you want communicated about your product. The kids that are maybe not like the 5-star, but are working hard at school, that have aspirations to be a professional, something else, speak well, they're actually going to be really good for your brand. I think that's probably where I've grabbed, I've kind of evolved is initially it was like who's going to grab all the eyeballs. I think now I want, certainly want somebody who's interesting, but athletes that are just really well-rounded. They do a better job with the message. They do a better job with the campaigns that we do. People interact with them, they share, and they have a much longer kind of evergreen in a campaign than just kind of the athlete. Because the athlete, it's cool, but I mean, you show some clips and within a week, that's noise, and because there's not much left on the line after that. So those would be kind of some of the few things that I learned pretty early was, you run your campaigns off season, or when they're after they've graduated. They're not like, I got a football player, we shot him after his senior year, he went into accounting, and he's safe forever. Like, but
Great.
yeah.
So
Thank you.
you could, yeah, good stuff. You can do ordinary people too. Your Jesus is back campaign really caught my eye. Tell the members what that was about, and then Mark's got a question, looks like.
Yeah, so we came across Jesus,
Yep.
and real quick, Jesus is a laborer, had his ankle done, and Jesus, it came to me because his doctor had just told me how like super grateful this guy was in the room. So I reached out to Jesus, and he left this huge impression on me of this guy that's like, he's a normal guy, and his ankles have been hurting forever, and it was compromising his life. And kind of really the thing that triggered me was he and his wife has actually decided not to have kids simply because he was so immobile on his ankle. And this is a young guy, 30. And then he'd got his ankle fixed, and 10 months after, finishing rehab, he has a baby daughter. And so like when you're gifted a storyline that like that, I was like, wow, we gotta, and his name's Jesus, right? Like, I mean, I didn't even really have to make much stuff up. Like, Jesus, ankle fixed and has a baby. But I think in that is trying to think about how people are going to identify with things. Like, we all, when we're all young, we all want to buy Air Jordans because we think or when I was young, the kids don't even know who Air Jordan is anymore. But I was never going to demand of my shoes what Jordan or LeBron or any of these guys do, but we aspire to the same thing. But there's also value in giving people someone they can relate to today. And Jesus was somebody a normal person who's not trying to play football, not trying to run marathons, could go, I don't need to do all that, but I do want to walk and play with my kids or my grandkids, and I can identify that. So that was kind of part of the texture. We decided we like the sporty stuff, but I think it's important from a texture standpoint to bring in, the normal people of different sizes and different shapes and different colors, different voices, different accents, because, beyond all the story, there's never been a time with more stimulation than right now. And so if you get too consistent with things, like, you just kind of fall back into the noise. So as you're playing with media and the different things, you're like, keep the word texture in mind. Use video, but don't always use video. Use pictures, but sometimes use black and white pictures. Do copy, but change the font. Like, just assume that everybody's bored with your stuff all the time. And if you start there, you'll probably be able to keep up a little bit, but just be careful of falling in love with, I've done this many times. I just think my stuff is awesome and I don't want to change it. And the next thing I know, like, nobody's watching it, nobody's clicking it, nobody's liking it. I'm like, okay, I'm not that good. I gotta, try some new things. So.
Mark, and then Kyle.
Yep. So I got two quick things for you. First of all, Jantzen, great talk.
Thank you.
I'm actually in Marietta, and I assume you're in Atlanta. I run a veterans nonprofit in addition to my medical business. Marietta National Cemetery land was donated to the federal government in 1864 by the Cole family. And I don't know if you do that or not.
I didn't know that.
It's on Cole Street in Marietta, but I thought you'd like to know that. Secondly, do you know Gavin Furlick with
I don't
Takeo?
know that. Mm-mm.
I'm going to introduce you by email because Gavin's father was the team doctor for the Notre Dame. And he invented an over the shoe super lightweight AFO brace that is in use at the University of Georgia, Alabama, a lot of teams and so forth. It's all about ankle stability. I think there'd be some cross pollination of ideas there. Okay,
Sure.
good talk.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Lappin. Been a minute, sir.
Been a long time. Couple things for you. After surgery, was Jesus portrayed as walking on water? Some setup for you.
Man, I missed that one. See, I told you I'm not a very good marketer. If I would have been one, I would have used that.
So I love what you talked about related to your brand and how you can guarantee excellence today. Tell me about, as you organize that message, how you socialize it and build a consistency with how that is talked about across your organization.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. For me, it all starts with like, when you commit to that, you define that thing. I think you have to have a hard talk with all the stakeholders in whatever that moment is. So for us, it's surgical efficiency. I mean, we have team meetings, and I think it's easy for marketing to go, this is what we're going to do. But if engineering's not behind that, like, hey, when we start to design this, we're going to get all kinds of ideas. At the end of the day, these ideas need to actually work in the OR really quickly. It may be the greatest scientific like instrument ever, but if it's not fast and it's not like simple, we're deviating from what we're telling people we're going to do. So part of that is just getting all of the stakeholders in alignment and go, okay, we're going to say this, and this is going to come from our megaphone. And then it's going to, when we say it out loud, people are going to see if we're telling the truth. So then they're going to go and try it. In engineering, now you're up. Like, you're about to be tested to see if you're efficient and good. And hey, sales rep, if you're not there getting the scrub tech ready and have them in line to have things lined out, they know what they're doing, then we're going to not actually deliver that experience. So we really had to kind of get all of the stakeholders together. One, two, then you build a message around it and you say it out loud. I mean, I think part of it is you got to put it into the ether, and that, that ether is in your one-on-one conversations. It can be in social. It's implied in your techniques and that sort of stuff. So there's some feeling that is left, with your end user. So for us, like, if that's my thing, then we are very gratuitous with those keywords: efficient, kinematic, natural. So we'll kind of build a whole, group of synonyms that are all kind of insinuating. So even subliminally, we're just trying to lace all communication with the idea of efficiency and kinematic appreciation and that sort of stuff. So even if they don't mean to, if people are around our stuff very long, then when they communicate it, they're going to use those same words because that's the only ones we're giving them. But that's the process, right? That's a year down the road. That's 2 years down the road. But it starts with getting everybody, like, it's got to be real. It's got to be true to get your stakeholders, and then marketing and sales, because they're usually the first person to disseminate this. They have to be consistent in the words. Like, and our team, we talk about words, particularly at our events or at trade shows. We kind of have a team meeting beforehand. We talk about key focuses of the meeting, anybody that we predict that's coming that's of special significance, and then we go through like, and here are the sentences that matter, and these are the words we're going to use. We're going to use this ad nauseum because we want everybody leaving this booth to be walking out here with this idea. And so in the things that I can control, that's kind of how we roll out that excellence: is get your core team, define your language, and make sure that it is interlaced everywhere. Even if you're talking about, picking people up from the airport, we'll make sure it's an efficient trip from the airport. Like, I mean, we just commit to it at that level. Like, we just want everything you're doing that touches us to feel like, man, that was pretty efficient. That was pretty cool. That was easy. Because those are things that are often within everybody's capability. That's the other thing, is just make sure it's something you can control. You can't always control the outcome. So claiming you're going to have 98% success rate, like, that's scary, because you may not. But anything that's effort driven, anything that is, you can absolutely control end to end, like, double down on that and tell people you're going to do it, then tell them you did it and tell them you'll do it again. It's just kind of like reinforcement.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah, it's kind of been a theme on BoneChat for the startups to reduce friction for the customer. That keeps coming up over and over again. Friction in selling, friction in pricing, reduce friction in the procedure, less steps. So yeah, that's another way to stand out. Just to be a company that's easy to work with.
I'll tell you this too, just thoughts on that. I these are just my thoughts, so feel free to disagree. I think when we service customers, and I've been really guilty of this in the past, it's easy to kind of lean in on these altruistic things. Patients are gonna have so much more happiness in their life, and I do think that matters, but don't ever forget you're actually talking to a human being, and as human beings, the first thing we all think about is ourselves. So even patient benefits are secondary benefits to the hospital and to the surgeon. And that, I did not market that way most of my life, but in more recent years, to me, that's why efficiency matters, right? So if I'm just as good to the patient as 12 other products, but I make surgery go faster, that doctor gets home faster, and the OR has more time. So whatever your thing is, it's for me, it's been helpful to step back and go, let's start with what the doctor or the facility gets out of my product. Because I've sent a lot of products through with all these kind of big outcome or big patient benefits. And as much as we'd all like to think the American healthcare system is really about patients, it's sometimes not. So try to think about where people are self-focused. And for me, that greases the skids for friction easier than patient-focused things.
So I get this question a lot, Jantzen. So the best content's out in the field. Obviously, it's before surgery, during surgery, after surgery. How do you interview a surgeon, about a case and post it, get approval to post that? Every hospital's different. ASCs are easier, but everybody pushes back on that.
Yeah. I generally don't try to do much in the hospital for that reason, because of efficiency. Because it takes a lot of time to go through all that. I've found more success asking them just to go, hey, when you get to your office, get to your house tonight, can we get on Zoom and just talk through some video, ask some questions, that sort of stuff. If we're going to do patient stuff, I still would probably have them wear their scrubs and still do it from either their office or their house. And this is not about effectiveness for me. It's about how many checkoffs I've got to go through. I think it can be eye-grabbing to kind of see the OR background. I personally, this is where I'm going to move from rebel to like old man. I'm really scared. Like at some point, there's going to be some people getting beat up for shooting in the OR that's not approved.
Right.
And I don't want to be that guy. And so I don't know. I get nervous in that area. I don't feel like I can control it very good.
Got it. Understood. Well, it's something the big companies cannot do. They literally can't do it.
Yeah.
We talked
It's
about,
effective.
legal. Yeah, it's really effective, but they can't get it past their legal compliance, regulatory departments. It's impossible. But little companies, they're trying to be a rebel, you can interview a surgeon right after a case.
Here's what I mean, I actually had somebody approach or offer this to me, and it's in my queue to give this a try. I think your opportunity there would actually, as opposed to getting, I think it's like anything. It's how you position things. I think a lot of these surgery centers um, would actually be open to free marketing. And I think if you go to surgery center, Joe's Ambulatory Surgery Center in, Canton, Georgia, and say, hey, you have a doctor here who's doing some really great things. We'd like to just kind of capture some of these, and we want to, we won't use names. We'll make sure you guys give it to you, give a week to approve it. But we'd like to, tag and call you guys out. Now I think you've got an advocate because they're interested in good press, and you're actually showing somebody talented in their facility like that can help them. I think most of these are kind of brought in as like, you're just part of here. We want to do our thing, and not, but I think if you include some of these facilities in what you're doing, I think it actually turns it to like, oh, let's do more of that. You may find all kinds of opportunities if you were to kind of pitch it to them as a co-marketing opportunity.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you're not doing anything different. You're just going, hey, but we'll tag you. We'll shout you out if you let us do it.
Makes sense. Totally makes sense. Any other questions? We're kind of gone over an hour.
I have one I'll throw in there very quickly. Yeah. Just so you mentioned the need to go from the we're great at everything to just focusing on one topic. How much pushback did you run into with that? Because I that's something that I've seen like at other companies and I have experienced even with the company I work with, of going through that process and how scared everybody is of leaving business on the table, so to speak.
It's terrifying, and I literally, went through it this morning. It never goes away. And it's okay, right? I mean, because as long as you kind of expect where it's going to come from sales guys who, like, number one, it's going to come from the sales guys because they're always going to see opportunity that's just a little bit off center. And in their world, that's a great opportunity. And so we've kind of had to kind of figure out how to play in the middle here, right? So what we've decided is that from a marketing, like when you see the face of the company and what we put real, like, visible resources into, it's going to be very narrow. It's going to be very, specific, and we're going to really lean on that. Underneath that, there is still some ability to vet opportunities. But here's kind of how we manage that conversation, at least for things that aren't, they're more busy. They're not really that useful. And I do find this to be true. We've had multiple conversations where we go, hey, revenue, it's not that revenue doesn't matter. Revenue matters. But if you're in a situation where you're trying to grow a startup and you're wanting to actually, get to a place where your valuation is a certain point for a strategic. More of the more recent acquisitions in orthopedics have occurred in subspecialties. There's not been many good for all things acquisitions, because my perception is that the strategics want to know that your business can go deep in a specialty. And if they can go deep in that specialty, even if you have philosophically opportunities left and right, then they're the ones, Stryker is not here to innovate anymore. Stryker is here to scale. So if you can show them that you can go deep in something, your enterprise value is real, but your enterprise value is going to be this subspecialty. The revenue you're driving, picking up in knees and shoulders on random Thursdays is helping your bills right now, but it doesn't change what Stryker values you at. And so we've had to kind of have some conversations with some of our people, like, it's not that we don't value what you see, and we know at the very local level, this is helpful. From our perspective in growing the enterprise value, it doesn't really help us. We'll do what we can without distracting from our main goals. But a lot of this is going to have to be on you if you really want to pursue this. And most of the time we get through that conversation and people kind of go, okay, I get it. That makes sense. But I think if it's just left with, we don't want to do that, it feels like you guys don't know what you're doing, or you don't like me or whatever. Having that conversation with some sort of clarity of like enterprise value or focus, and it really means a lot to us that we do what we say we're going to do. We're growing trust, we're growing consistency, so we're going to stay here. And this may be useful to you, and go do it. But I will tell you, we manage these things, we measure these things. If you get in line with what we're doing, your path to increase revenue is going to happen a lot more consistently and usually at a quicker rate. So we didn't really get to that. But I think that other part of early on is you really have to set some things in place on how you measure the things you do. Because that's your next thing is kind of go. But for us, we can do 10 knee labs, but with no real program and no real technique, and we can't reproduce it. Scalability is meh. You got this one guy, that's what you got. In foot and ankle, I mean, I could tell you by tactic what our conversion rate is, how long it takes it, by DPM, by MD, by DO. Like, so I can go to my sales rep, like, you want to, I hear you talking about this. What I hear you saying is you want to make more money. Let me show you the data, because I want you to make more money too. This is the fastest way for that to happen. I'm not saying you couldn't do that over here, but if you do this, it's much quicker, and it the exponential side of it happen. You get this one, you just got one. That's just kind of dead end. You got to maintain this person. So I think that data becomes very important.
That's great stuff. I know we're running way over, Tiger, but I gotta
Keep
say,
going.
yeah, although I run a compliance company for over 1,000 medical practices, I also run an orthopedic business. And I took over Treese from the guy that was the first dealer here, who wasted 1.5 years with the Podiatry Institute, all these labs and everything else. And the day I took it over, I told Treese, I said, I'm going to build the biggest ortho base you got in the country. Because one orthopedic surgeon will do 10 times as much surgery as one podiatrist. And we did. 2 years later, I sold it back to him for a very nice profit. And the Atlanta market is still the Tree's biggest ortho lapiplasty market in the United States. And it's really put them on the map. But that's just an example of finding, the right marquee player and going really deep, going vertical in that one little market. Because the only reason orthopedic surgeon had never done bunions is because they don't work the way they used to do them. And they don't like to do things that don't work, so they just wouldn't do them. But they do the hell out of them now. Anyway, great talk. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Mark. Good stuff. All right, I'll let everybody go because we're past the hour. Great discussion. We may have to do a round 2 with Jantzen at some point. And I'd love to hear about data and analytics. But anyway, that's a wrap. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week. Okay.